How are we
Oh,
doing?
God. Here we go again.
Hello and welcome to game week 10 of the Stacey West EFL Fantasy League show, the show that we enjoy recording. I was going to say more than you enjoy watching, but we're regularly hitting three figures now, which is pretty good, really, isn't it? It seems to have been in conjunction with me winning 5 weeks in a row.
You know what? You beat me to it. I was going to say that the viewing numbers have steadied out ever since you got better at it. I don't know what that says about me, but you have certainly improved. Or, of course, it could be the other way around, is that I have just got significantly worse as the weeks have progressed.
Well, do you know what? I think we've both actually got better, or we think we're getting better as things have progressed. Now, there's certain things now I'm not doing, and I think it's a trap you fell into last week. So we're going to discuss that in a moment. But for those who are watching the show and want to know what's coming up, it's going to be slightly different this week. So Chris and I are going to do the usual look at my team as the winning team, and then we're going to look at Chris's, which was the losing team. We're going to run you through some of the big performers last week. Remember, it was only a really limited game week, so it's predominantly League Two players. Unbelievably, one of the players that I have always thought has been rubbish scored really well. So we'll talk about him. Then we've got a great guest on this week, because we have got EFL Fantasy Josh. That's his name in the green room right now. He is top of the Stacey West League. He is 68th in the whole country. Bear in mind, Chris is 67th in the Stacey West. So he's doing absolutely phenomenally. He's involved in a massive fight, and I'm sure it's nice and well-mannered, not divorced, with his wife, Amy, who is 5th in the Stacey West League. So we've got Josh on. He's going to tell us what we're doing wrong, no doubt. He's going to be on in about 10 minutes. But first of all, Chris, shall we have a little look at substandard? I mean, substandard that's master of the understatement, isn't it? Substandard liaise this week.
In other weeks, I felt unlucky. This week, I didn't feel that unlucky in regard to my picks. A couple of poor ones. Though I must say, one solitary goal this weekend cost me a minimum of 18 points, just to point that out. So, of course, as you can see, I heavily backed Barrow. Will Stanway in goal, Ben Jackson there, and also backing Barrow as one of my teams. It was 0-0 for quite a lot of that game. So Will Stanway had an extra 5 points because of a clean sheet. Ben Jackson had an extra 10 points because of a clean sheet because I captained him. And, of course, Barrow themselves would have had a few points for being a draw, not a loss. One horrible, painful goal later, and my, as it stood at the time, reasonably comfortable winning margin was all but destroyed. So that was really disappointing. Really, really disappointing. It was one goal ultimately has cost me this here.
So this is getting really competitive, isn't it?
Yeah.
And on a Saturday afternoon now, we're messaging each other, and obviously you were playing for Horncastle on Saturday afternoon. I was on the Lash in Greenwich, and I was genuinely sat in a pub, the Gypsy Moth, right next to the Cutty Sark in Greenwich, willing Morecambe to score, like some sort of Morecambe fan. And we got to the hotel, and I got laid on the bed. I'd had a couple of pints. We were going out in an hour. Morecambe scored. I genuinely don't think I've celebrated another team's goal like I've celebrated. And I had, by the way, Barrow as well. So it cost me, but because I knew it was costing you more, and I'd kind of done those maths in my head. But up until then, you were winning. And also, I think that the point here is the difference between us really is who we picked as captain. Because if you'd picked Mickey Demetriou as captain, as I did, you would have been 9 points up on 46. Or you've been a couple down on Ben Jackson, to be fair. We have a look at the winning team.
If we must, but I just want to touch on my experience of Saturday afternoon, because you mentioned yours there, because it is the total opposite. So 2:30 kickoff at Horncastle last weekend. It's only my second game. Kind of just dusted off the old boots and gloves, kind of playing whenever Lincoln haven't got a game or on a long away day, just to kind of help the guys out. So it's not like I'm kind of part of this team regularly. So a lot of the guys don't really know me yet. So I kind of had a shower, had change, went in the bar after the game. Sky Sports News was on with the Soccer Saturday there. There I was looking at my team, looking at your team, looking at what the current scores were. Also just want to touch on MK Dons, by the way, and Port Vale, because Laurent Tollage was in my team. It was 0-0 away at MK Dons. He came off a few minutes later. The person that came on for him, Anton Hackwood, netted. So that's frustrating. So that was annoying. But when the Morecambe goal went in, I was as passionately disappointed as a legitimate Barrow fan for the afternoon. And so much so that a couple of lads said, "Oh, what's up? Like, who's playing that you support? I thought you were a Lincoln fan." I was like, "I'm a Lincoln fan." I said, "Oh, so why do you care that Morecambe have scored? You're not a Barrow fan, are you?" It's like, I am today. I really am today. But then that worked quite nicely because then I was able to educate a few of the guys that hadn't even heard that EFL Fantasy was a thing, and now they know that it exists. So I suppose there is the bigger picture view there, that a few extra people know what it's all about now. But I was gutted, Gaz. I was gutted.
Thanks to Morecambe. Bear in mind, I had my stag weekend, didn't we? We started in Morecambe. We had a great time there. Thanks to Morecambe, this was the winning team this week. And when I say winning team, I mean that very loosely, because it's like trying to say that you've won something when you've gone out in the fourth FA Cup fourth qualifying round, but you've gone out by scoring slightly more goals than the opposition. So than somebody else, not the opposition. Otherwise, you go through. This is the winning team anyway. So Mickey Demetriou as captain was a big one for me. Really good pick for me. And Andy Cook, that's the one I'm most proud of. I knew he would be up for that game at Tranmere.
Yeah, that was a smart pick because I chose against Andy Cook because I've been stung by Bradford a couple of times so far this season, and it was more past experience. But actually, when you justified why you picked him because of his goal scoring record against former clubs, that was just really smart. And then it wasn't too dissimilar sort of time in the afternoon that three things happened really quickly, and that Morecambe scored. Port Vale went a goal up, and I thought, oh, Port Vale have scored. Does that mean that I've got some extra points? But no, it was a substitute. And then Andy Cook scored his second goal, all within maybe a 5-10 minute window. So I'd gone from being pretty pleased to then absolutely devastated. But I can only credit the Andy Cook selection. That was, really smart.
So I honestly believe the only reason I won this week, aside from the Morecambe goal, is because I didn't bank on a team too heavily. And you had got 2 players from Port Vale, you'd got 2 from Barrow, and you'd picked Barrow. And I try really hard not to lump on too much too soon. But Carl Winchester and Aaron Weldig. I mean, Aaron Weldig's been scoring for fun, just the 2 points, which was better than nothing. But Winchester didn't even get on the field. And he started, I think, every game for Shrewsbury up until this week. So again, that little kiss of death that I have has kind of happened again. Anyway, that's 5-3. We'll move that off for a time being.
Just to touch on something, of course. Now, I hope this doesn't happen, but right at the very start of our little competition, we made a rule when it feels like another lifetime ago now, but I was 3-0 up at one point. And we introduced a rule which suggested that if either of us over the course of the season get to a point where we are ahead by 3 points, then that particular person will have to be subject to some sort of handicap. So if you do win again, at least I've got the benefit of you having a handicap for a week. And it was that week that was a turnaround. You won that week and I've won every week since. So maybe that would happen again if I don't get my act together this week.
Now, if that happens, there is actually a lesson to be learned. There are riches in them there hills, as they say, because the leading goalkeeping goal scorer this week was Stuart Moore of Morecambe. Virtually nobody backed him. Connor Ripley was the second leading goalkeeper, a 9-point return. Fewer than 1% had picked him. Defenders, Toby Sims at Harrogate Town had a 15-point haul, fewer than 1%. George Cox, Czech Diabetes, and unbelievably, Toto Nsiala, who is comfortably the worst defender in the world. Comfortably. All of them, 12-point hauls, all 3 of them collectively register as 0% ownership. So while everyone's picking the players, like Aaron Wildig, I don't know how you pronounce it or care, but you pick him, you think he's done well, he gets the 2 points. In the midfield, Ethan Archer, 0.4% of people had picked him, 15 points.
2 weeks in a row for him as well.
Yeah. Joel McGregor, 16-point haul, minimal, if any, fantasy backing. I mean, it's outrageous. Even the forwards, the highest scoring forward of the week was Matt Stevens, who scored, I think, 4 for MK Dons, to give him a 24-point haul. And again, 0.1% of people had picked him. So all of the highest scorers this week, every single one of them, even John Marquis, was a 16-point haul at 0.1. So while we all follow the herd, it's those that are thinking outside of the box often that are successful. But is that the case? Well, the best way to find that out is by asking somebody who is successful, isn't it?
Yeah, because we ain't got a bloody clue.
Yeah, we haven't got a clue. So let's bring somebody in who does have a clue. It's a little bit gutting that he's on, if I'm honest, because it's 2 views, I think, on YouTube that we won't get this week because he probably won't watch it back. But let's bring in Josh. How are you doing, Josh? You all right, mate?
Hello, Gary. Thanks for having me on the show. Hello, Chris. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Good. Now, just to clarify, first of all, so you are not a Lincoln fan, you are a Bristol City fan.
Yeah, that's right. A long-suffering 36-year-old Bristol City fan. Never seen Premier League football. Probably never will.
Well, we can identify with that, but we'll never see Championship football either. So how did you find out about the Stacey West League?
To be honest, like one of my main tips for doing well in EFL Fantasy is to consume content. And so just literally typing into YouTube EFL Fantasy, you guys came up and obviously wanted to see your take on it. So get some tips.
I think it's the other way around, because this show is very much about 2 idiots bumbling their way through in EFL Fantasy and learning as we go. But it's very nice that you went to the effort.
Yeah, I think so. Fair play. So look, so you're obviously top at the moment. We'll come on to your skills and tips in a minute, but your wife Amy is 5th as well. So is there ever any tension in the household there? Is the sort of banter that me and Chris have going on across the dinner table?
Definitely the same as you guys. It's a bit worrying, obviously, for me being a bloke and kind of expect to sort of do pretty well in football terms, but she's obviously got some good ball knowledge too, so it's all good banter.
Is she a Bristol City fan as well?
She is. I mean, I wouldn't marry anyone else. So.
I'm not going to. I hope that my wife doesn't watch this, but she's not even a football fan, so, which is probably best given the level of banter. So, let's. What we want to do, Josh, if it's all right, is get mine and Chris's teams up this week. Yep. We'll very, very briefly talk through our picks, and then we'll try and get your take on it and see what you think of our teams. You happy with that?
Sounds good.
So, there's the winning team again. Sorry, Chris. It does look good. Anyway, let's scroll on. So Chris, this is you, game week 11. Just in a couple of minutes, talk us through some of your picks.
Okay, I'll go as quick as I can. Gone heavy with the back 3 again. And some defenders who expect to be high in regards to either busy and or conceding less than one goal or less, hopefully clean sheets. So O'Connor from Lincoln, got Birmingham at home on Saturday, which will be tough. But Lincoln don't concede more than 1 goal very often, and O'Connor will be very busy. So I imagine he'll score highly for clearances, tackles, etc. Aimson and Piergiani, again, score really, really highly for clearances and tackles, etc. And are both really interestingly playing both Cambridge and Mansfield. Both of them are playing in simultaneous games that way around. But again, potential for clean sheets there. And I've gone Sam Tickle in goal again for hopefully potential clean sheets. You know, there's a big points to be scored from clean sheets. So I think it makes sense to pick the team that draws every game 0-0 in Wigan. And of course, Piergiani scores really highly because he's on the end of everything for Stevenage, who have got a very kind of defensive and solid style. Borja Sainz up top, which is someone who I was pretty keen on. I was rare. I actually had a centre forward or a forward at least that I was actually pretty keen on. I like Norwich's form at the moment. I like how they're playing. Borja Sainz seems to be pretty involved in most things they do really well. And I just really fancied him this week, to be honest. And then I've got a midfield 2 in Molineux and Poku. So Doncaster Rovers are a team I'm backing this weekend. They've got Swindon away and Bromley at home. Swindon, particularly at home, actually are quite poor at the moment, despite a positive victory at the weekend. There's a bit of a hostile atmosphere at their ground at the moment. So I'm hoping that a strong Doncaster team can do well there. And Bromley, again, are probably, despite a positive start to the season, have shown that it is still quite a big jump from the National League to League Two at times when you're a certain size club. Doncaster have been doing well, and Molineux has been a consistent performer for them. And then last but not least is Kwame Poku. Wasn't actually that sold on Peterborough this weekend. I think they've got 2 tough games away at Wickham and at home to Blackpool. but also we've witnessed firsthand Kwame Poku's ability to create something from absolutely nothing. I had a couple of other midfielders that I was tempted by, Saville of Millwall and Taylor of Walsall, but I decided to go for Poku just because in these two games, I expect him to get a goal or assist in one of those two games, and he has the capability of creating something from nothing. He's a championship quality player playing in League One. So I picked him for that reason. Already mentioned Doncaster. And then my team at the bottom is Walsall, who have got a home game, which follows an away trip to Grimsby. Now, Grimsby, of course, on really, really good form at the moment. But they have got a goalkeeper on emergency loan currently, Jackson Smith, who had a great game at the weekend against Salford, by the way. And he can't play. He's on loan from Walsall. So I thought that might have a factor there as well. So it might be a surprise to pick a team that's playing away at Grimsby. But Walsall there, I'm hoping we could get a positive result, or hopefully two.
Yeah, I mean, just before we go on, Jackson Smith's actually on loan from Barnsley, not Walsall.
Oh my god! So this is you know what? That's so embarrassing because I like to pride myself on our regular Stacey West podcast for getting my facts right. So he must have been. I know he was at Walsall last year, so he must have moved to Barnsley or been on loan at Walsall. And to be honest with you, I have had an incredibly busy day. so I picked this as quickly as I could with as much thought as I could with the time I had. And I thought I'd been smart there. Is there any way you can cut that out?
No, not now. So let's throw that over to Josh. What are your thoughts there, apart from the unrealistic lack of research, which really surprises me from Chris? It is a one-off, but what are your thoughts, Josh?
Before I answer that question, can I just point out, you criticised me a couple of weeks ago when I said I generally put about 90 minutes or so into this, and you said, I do about 5 minutes. So you know what? I'm losing anyway. What's the point? So yeah, I'm not having you criticising me for putting an hour and a half into it, and then also criticising me for not putting enough effort into it.
Let's throw it over to Josh then. What do we think, Josh?
Well, the first thing, obviously, is it's got the 3-2-1 formation, which I'm a big fan of myself. I mean, I think you've mentioned on previous shows, I think there's something like 10 of the top or 12 of the top 15 players are defenders on the game. So, I mean, it's logical that you put 3 at the back because they're more consistent in the scoring. They've got more routes to points. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that if you have 2 strikers, often they're the most likely to be rotated in terms of the minutes. They usually come off around 75 minutes for the sub-striker. Signs is one of the few, actually, that generally gets 90 minutes or 85 minutes, which is a big plus for the forward. But a lot of strikers in the game, you'll notice, come off around the 70th, 75th minute, which is a bit frustrating. The thing... Obviously, you'll see my team in a bit, and I think we've got a few players the same. So obviously, I'm a big fan of O'Connor. You know more about him than me, being Lincoln fans. Aimson as well, with those Wigan clean sheets. He's going to be getting lots of points. Piergiani's a big goal threat from corners. Poku and Molyneux, obviously, they've been doing really well this season, and I expect that to continue. I didn't go for Poku myself for the same reason that Chris mentioned about the fixtures being a bit tough. That kind of put me off. The thing that I don't like about it is that at this stage in the season in fantasy, I'm not a big fan of kind of putting too many eggs in one basket. So with the Wigan defence, you've doubled up there, and then you've doubled up with Doncaster with sort of Molyneux and the team pick, and that kind of, if it goes, I like the last game week. Obviously, a lot of people had 3 Barrow assets. And some people captained them and effectively had 4 with the team pick, and that all went wrong. Whereas I went for Wimbledon just to try and sort of negate the risk a little bit. So I try and make sure that I have, different options all over the pitch, as it were. And the same with the team picks, just to kind of minimize the risk. And then obviously later on, as the campaign goes on, sort of in the back end of the game, we might start to double up and triple up then when we can afford to take some more risks when we're trying to sort of gain big rank, that sort of thing. But generally speaking, I like all the players, and I think, anything can happen, can't it, in EFL Fantasy? So could be a hit or it could be a miss. You just never know.
I think that's a
Smashing.
really interesting point, and it backs up what you said before, guys, that I've never listened to, which is
No.
spreading your chances effectively. Because I have pretty much every week double backed certain players, often tripled up with a captain, a player, and the team, in the thought that if it goes well, you get a big score. But as we found out, particularly last week, if it goes wrong by one solitary goal, can I point out, then it goes catastrophically wrong, doesn't it? So that is definitely something I'm going to take on board, Josh. Thank you.
If you're going to do it, then maybe concentrate on doing sort of midfielders and forwards, so that, you know, every time the clean sheet's gone, which is only one goal, it doesn't mess up, you know, 3 or 4 potential components of your scoreboard. Whereas, you know, in the attacking sense, you could end up with a 4-4 draw and you could still get a big score, that type of thing. So
noted. Gary, permission to change my team 100 completely now, live on air.
You know what? It's brilliant because you and I, we kind of bumble along in the dark, and then we bring a guest on. We brought Dean on, and Dean was the one that introduced us to kind of 3 at the back, and I picked up on it straight away. It took you 1 more week, I think, but as soon as I hear advice, and it was Josh who said, "Don't play your triple captain until game week 21," and so I'm in the comments on YouTube, I'm like, "You know what? That's it now." So let's have a look at my team. I'll talk us through really quickly. Now, I wanted to back Wimbledon last week, but my fear was, it was raining at the time when I picked my team, and I thought, if it rains too much, they've just been flooded. What if it's called off? Really frustrating, because I had Goodman picked last week, and I would have had a clean sheet. Now, I'm a man who likes a consistent back 3. I like a consistent back 3 at Lincoln. I like one here. Mickey Dimitri has just been scoring points for me. He's consistent. When he stops scoring points, I'll look somewhere else. Same with Pordy. I mean, Pordy said hello to us yesterday. We were actually at Lincoln City training yesterday, and he looked straight at us and said, "All right, boys." So as far as I can say, he's not coming out of my team until he gets sent off, which, may I point out, he did the first time I picked him. And Will Ameson's just been again a behemoth for me, and I think that Wigan will keep clean sheets, hence captaining him. But again, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket, and I'm really, really careful on that. Molineux and Saville, I picked Molineux before and he didn't play. But again, he gets the goals. Savile's doing really well for Millwall. They're a bit of a surprise package for me, because I actually thought under Neil Harris they'd be really bad. I don't think Neil Harris is a good manager. I mean, how has he failed upwards from getting sacked at Gillingham to suddenly being at a relatively stable Championship club? And Josh Madger, you know, the boy's been really good for me, Josh. I remember writing about him when he was at Sunderland, and he left there and he went over to France, I seem to think. I think the Oxford away game is one where he could score. If you actually I read up on him, he actually has an issue scoring at the Hawthorns. He scores a lot of goals away from home, but he doesn't score as many at home, and they're talking about trying to end that hoodoo. So when I thought they were away twice this week, and I have taken a bit of a risk, actually, with my teams at the bottom. West Brom are the only one I've doubled up on, but those away wins are worth more. I think that they will get one against Oxford. Blackburn, anyone's guess. But I think if anybody's likely to win 2 games away from home this week, it could be them. And then I just like Walsall. They don't have a lot of the ball. They're like Lincoln. They don't have a lot of high scorers peppered across the team. Hence me not picking one of their players. But I think they can beat Carlisle, who will just hang on to the ball and play nowhere. So they're my picks. Let's throw it over to, I hope it doesn't sound bad when I say throw it over to the expert. And I happen to know that I do share several components of my team with Josh, so it's not going to get battered quite as much.
No, that's right. So obviously, again, you've got O'Connor there and Ameson and Molineux, same as Chris. So obviously, they're going to score the same points. Although you've captained Ameson, I see, which is a good idea. I like the idea of captaining a defender, because I think, generally speaking, they get the highest average points. And when there's a double game week, particularly, it's more likely that they will end up the highest scorer.
I captained Ameson too. So.
Oh, you did? Sorry. So I like Saville. Obviously, he's just an interceptions monster, isn't he? I think he's had about 23, is it?
Yeah.
And those fixtures against Derby and Plymouth look really good for him. Madger, obviously, again, he was the other option. I was looking at myself. It was either Signs or Madger for me, so can't argue with that. It's good fixtures. Goodman in goal. That's an interesting pick. Not really. Yeah, I'm not too sure about that one myself. I think there are better options out there with Tickle and Whitworth. But Obviously, Wimbledon got a clean sheet at the weekend, so they'll be confident after that 4-0 win, so could work. I like the Walsall pick. Obviously, they're riding high at the top of the league, aren't they? And they've got some good fixtures too. So as far as the double West Brom away games, I think, like you said, if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be them, and potentially Norwich as well would be the other ones I'd look at for 2 possible away wins, given the form they're in and the fixtures that they have. And Dimitri, obviously, I mean, you don't need to say anything about him. The guy's been the best in the game, hasn't he? And he's the most consistent performer. 2 good fixtures as well, I think. And yeah, I think it's going to be another close battle between you both. But if I had to put my neck on the line, which I know you're going to ask me, I've got to go with you, Gary, for having Dimitri in there. I just think it's a game breaker.
Wow, there we go. That's I thought, yeah, you had Piergiani, didn't you? There we go. Well, I'll reserve my cheers until Sunday afternoon or Wednesday evening. It will be now, won't it? So let's have a look at Josh's team, and Chris and I can have a little critique of this afterwards. So you've probably talked us through most of them anyway. I think the main ones there are the different ones, probably with Doughty, and then you've gone for Port Vale as well. But just talk us through it a little bit, touching on the bits you haven't already touched on.
You know, in goal, we've got Whitworth, who I think is the highest average scoring goalkeeper in the game. I think he averages 7 or 7.2 points per game, which obviously he won't maintain going forward for the rest of the season, because that's basically getting a clean sheet every game in this. But Exeter's defence has been really solid. I think they're about 7th in the table. They've got Shrewsbury away, who I think you agree with that with me, are not very good. I know I'm actually a Shropshire lad myself. I'm from Shrewsbury, and so I have a bit of a soft spot for them. And it was nice to see them win 5-3 at the weekend. But obviously that was against 10-man Crawley, who are equally poor. So I'm not really reading too much into that, and I don't see them scoring against Exeter tomorrow night. So that's part of the reason for having Whitworth in. And I also think Reading are quite an inconsistent side, and with the game being at home, I don't see why they can't get another clean sheet there. So seems like a good pick to me. Dimitri, obviously, he's my captain, just because from an ownership point of view, I think all my players are, I think, under 10% owned. Dimitri's way up there at about 15%. And I think a lot of players are going to be captaining him this weekend, especially some of the ones in the top sort of 500 of the game. So just to kind of ensure I sort of maintain my rank a bit, I think it's a bit too risky to go against him. So that's kind of the reason for doing that. Doughty, obviously similar reasons for Saville. He gets a lot of interceptions. He also makes a ton of key passes for Luton. They've got 2 home fixtures. He's on all their free kicks and set plays, corners, everything. So he's got plenty of chance for getting assists. And although Luton obviously haven't had a good season at all, I think it's their worst start for possibly many, many years, I still think they're underperforming, and eventually there'll be a regression to the mean, and I expect them to have an upturn in their form. And if anyone's to do it, it'll be Alfie Doughty getting a big haul. Obviously, Signs we've talked about. I think he's the man in form at the moment. Norwich are scoring lots of goals. I think they've scored 3 or more in the last 2 or 3 games. So I really expect him to get a goal or 2 with games against Stoke and Preston, who, I don't really rate in terms of championship quality. They'll be sort of at the bottom end of the table. No disrespect to their fans or anything, but I like Bristol City. We're a poor side this season, and I think they're going to be, at the bottom end. And I think Norwich should be in and around the playoffs. So I expect them to win both those games. And Port Vale, obviously, they've been doing really well this season. A nice game away at Harrogate. I think that's a potential chance to get, the 7 points for the away win there, plus maybe a clean sheet. I could see them winning both games, but it's also because I actually didn't want to use any of the sort of big teams like Birmingham, Leeds. A lot of people have gone for Burnley. I've used them maybe once this season already, and I'm kind of already planning ahead when I want to use those. So strategically, I'm holding them back for, triple game weeks like game week 21, where you're probably going to want to have Leeds and Birmingham play 3 times. for obvious reasons. So it's all a bit about making sure I save the better team picks for some of the doubles which are more favourable later on in the season. So I just think that Port Vale and Walsall are two informed teams who are capable of winning both those games, and the other picks are similar to they're in your teams as well. So obviously, I like them.
Fantastic stuff. Do you know there's some real common sense stuff in there that I quite like around the team picks and things like that. There's Chris and I sitting here being educated. Can I just say, of the current top 10 nationally, 6 of those people picked Mickey Demetriou last week. Not one of them plays 3 at the back.
Yeah.
The top 3 all play 2, 2, and 2, which is really interesting. And the best team last week did have the Wimbledon keeper Goodman. He had captain Matt Stevens, which is unbelievable. Look, that's like sticking. It's just
48 points from one player.
The team, honestly, so the team that won game week 10 had Robbie McKenzie in, who didn't even play. They actually drew a blank, but he still scored 100 points. So yeah, I like that. I mean, it's almost like there's combinations of stuff that Chris and I have done. I had looked at Whitworth as well, but I don't know. I wanted to back Wimbledon last week. I've done it this week. Here's the time then for some trash talk, Josh, just before we round up, because we've also got Amy's team, haven't we? So now I can't say too much. Amy's team is a bit of Chris, Pia Gianni, Sam Tickle, a bit of me and you with Demetriou, and I've got Madja. But why is she not going to beat you this week?
Well, the Millwall pick, although I do expect them to potentially win both those games, I only see them winning sort of 1-0. So that's already the potential to miss out on 4 points for scoring 2 goals or more across the 2 games. Obviously, the Norwich pick has a lot more risk to it than mine, with the fact that they're playing 2 away games. So I kind of wanted to avoid that. Sirkin, as I said, they're away to Luton in that second fixture. And with me having Doughty, I expect Luton to score at home. I think the clean sheet won't happen there. So hopefully, Pia Gianni, obviously, Mansfield away is not the easiest fixture. I think Mansfield have been one of the better sides this season. And obviously, yeah, Brownhill, it's a good pick, to be honest. I can't argue with that. It's a Madja. I mean, the rest of the picks are, they're pretty good. I think that she's going to get a good score looking at that. But, obviously, I just think my team's better. Otherwise, I'd have picked the assets that she has. So.
Can I just say one thing about Alfie Doughty, because he's a player I've really liked, and I've picked him multiple times this season. But it's the fact that Luton have it's not that they're not letting themselves down. They've not let their fans down. They've let me down over a few times this season. And I really like Alfie Doughty as a player, just completely away from fantasy EFL, but particularly like him in here because you mentioned it, because he's able to score points in both ways. I've just been scared off. It's similar to kind of Andy Cook and Bradford last week, guys. I've just been scared off him from past experiences. So I think a few things I've learned from this is take your emotions out of it from previous kind of misdemeanors from other players.
Yeah,
and
well, I had
spread your chances, because that's something I haven't done at any point really. So that's really interesting.
I had Doughty in the last double game week. I think it was game week 8, and I think Luton drew 2-2 at home to Oxford, which I expected them to win, and they lost. I think was it 3-2 down at Plymouth, and Doughty, even in those 2 poor results, managed to pick up 20 points. So not going to complain at that.
I think it was that game week where I backed Wigan, even though they were playing Lincoln, which I found really hard. Right, so I think if Amy wins this week, she'll have to come on the show and be able to crash talk your team. Look, Josh, thank you so much for coming on, mate. Thank you for playing, and hopefully we'll get you on again in a couple of weeks' time. See how you're doing, because obviously leading the Stacey West League, you're almost like our entry into Europe. So we're like Lithuania or something, and you're like the best from our country going off and fighting the Stacey West corner, in our opinion. You're an honorary Lincoln fan. So thank you very much for coming on, mate, and we will speak to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Right, Mr. Lamming, so that was game week 10. done and dusted. Some fascinating stuff there from Josh as well. Always, every day's a school day, isn't it?
Certainly is. Yes, certainly is. Loads of really interesting points. It's nice to see how similar we are, yet having so many things that I've done wrong.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that the stuff he's saying is stuff that we've kind of tried to adhere to a little bit. But it's doing it all at the same time.
Yeah, and consistently as well. Not just doing it all at once, we're doing it all at once every time, rather than trying to be almost too smart in picking a quirky pick, but also just being really sensible and using common sense in discussion and picking them. Yeah. Why would you not captain Dimitri? He's the highest scoring player on that. He's got the highest average each week. And most people are going to be captaining him, so I'll captain him. So that's the thing that stuck in my head most, Josh, is that, oh, yeah, that's a really obvious way of thinking about this.
And I've captained him. No, I haven't. I've captained Will Amison, haven't I, this week?
Yeah, we both have, yeah.
As have you. So, right, well, we're 36 minutes in, so we will say goodbye for now. I'm not going to do the up with call and I because I don't want to rub your nose in it, but it's 5 on the spin. If it goes to 6 on the spin, I've got to go onto the 1% club. If it doesn't go to 6 on the spin, I think we start mixing our teams up a little bit, looking for a challenge, all League 2 or something along those lines. But we will see.
If anyone has any suggestions, by the way, of particular challenges that we could maybe try and attempt each week in terms of our selection, let us know. Stick it in the comments, etc. That's a very YouTube thing to say, isn't it? But yeah, please do let us know.
Guys, give us a subscribe. Please do let us know. But in the meantime, I think we'll just let the intro players out. What do you reckon?
Sounds like a plan to me.